Thank you so much for joining me today to discuss and talk about some classic hardcore. I'm really excited. Just a quick intro. I'm Annie, and I've been playing World of Warcraft for a very long time, and I have been a content creator for the game for about 8 years now, I believe. So that's also been quite a while. Would you guys like to introduce yourselves? I'd love to hear a little bit about you.
Yeah, sure. I'm Nora Valletta. I also have been playing World of Warcraft for a very long time, and nowadays I am a lead software engineer on World of Warcraft Classic.
I'm Josh Greenfield. The community, I think some people know me as Agrind. I have been at Blizzard for 14 years. I'm a senior game producer. I've been on WoW Classic since basically the very beginning, about 5 years now.
Awesome. I'm so excited to have you guys here. But yeah, let's just jump into the questions then. My first question, which will be quite relevant to when the servers start up, is will there be an official leaderboard for those who are racing to max level?
No plans for that. That's a cool thing that the community has kind of run, but we don't have anything in place for that right at launch.
Gotcha. In that case, the next question being quite relevant to that, I'm wondering if there's going to be an Armory or some kind of API where people can pull official information from to be able to, maybe make their own websites for leaderboards and such. Is that something that's going to be possible?
So we did update our Classic era APIs with this patch, so add-on developers might notice that we're exposing a little more than we were previously. However, in terms of hardcore specific statistics, there won't be anything available on launch, I'm afraid. It is something that we've been discussing, however. The way we sort of approach stuff like this is we want to balance our desire for caution on what data we expose to third parties with our desire to empower add-on creators to do fun and interesting stuff. So while we make no promises, we've been toying with different ideas, such as perhaps exposing the number of hardcore character deaths, highest level character of each class, things of that nature. As I've said, no promises, but it is something that's on our minds.
Okay, cool. Because I think the community would love to, if you guys can't or aren't able to make the official leaderboards, for example, if the API was available, then community could make something like that. So that's awesome. The next couple questions are a bit bigger. Wondering on the topic of achievements. So I'm a huge achievement farmer in all versions of World of Warcraft. Normal Classic doesn't have achievements, as we know, but I'm wondering if you guys have any serious thoughts on maybe implementing that for Hardcore Classic. One of the things which has influenced me to ask this is the Hardcore add-on, which has, those types of challenges within it, like defeating an elite quest before a certain level, for example. And I'm wondering if you're considering making these things a part of the game itself.
Yeah, it's a great question, Annie. The short answer is no, probably not at launch. I would say never, but one of the things that we're very sensitive about with World of Warcraft Classic, especially era, like vanilla Classic essentially, is we want to make as few major gameplay adjustments as possible to that version of the game. It's still obviously it's not, there's no way to make it a perfect recreation, and there are a few things that we've changed over the years, but we do that very tactically, and we try and keep it as close to the base game as possible. Original World of Warcraft is very kind of open-ended and sandboxy. It's probably the most sandboxy version of World of Warcraft, and something like achievements that puts it a little bit more on rails, and for some people that's incredibly engaging. Like, I know you have at various points had every achievement in the game, and that's awesome. But
I wasn't going to say that.
Yeah, yeah. Anyway, but so yeah, it's something that we think is cool for the versions of the game, sort of the eras of the game where that was introduced and that was a thing. But something like that would be kind of a major foundational change to WoW Classic, and that's not something we're really looking to do right now.
Yeah, I think at its core, I agree with you, and that's why I would never expect something like this on a regular Classic server. But because of this hardcore add-on, I feel like there's maybe some potential interest in it. I think it's the challenges are there for other reasons than the regular sandbox game, so that's why I wanted to ask to hear your thoughts on it.
One thing I will add on to that, though, is that we do have the Soul of Iron system present in on the hardcore realms. So essentially, what that was introduced in Season of Mastery, but we went ahead and ported that over to this rule set as well. And you can go to an NPC in Ironforge or Undercity, depending on your faction, and they will basically put a little cosmetic buff on you that says you never died. Obviously, if you're on a hardcore server, you've never died. But if you do specific things, like if you get to, if you kill Ragnaros, for example, you get a Survivor of the Fire Lord little cosmetic buff, and it even has a visual proc of a little fire tornado around you. And so there are a few of those. There's one of those for every end boss in the 40-player raids for original WoW. And that's the thing. That's the kind of system that I could kind of see us maybe adding on to in the future. Like no specific plans or anything to announce with that, but that's definitely something that would be a vector that we feel might be pretty appropriate to do something like that in the future. So that's a cool, I think, way to approach that.
Okay, so in terms of nearest future, it's in the form of special buffs in essence, and maybe in the further future consider achievements based on what community says, I guess.
Absolutely. This whole thing has been community driven. Yeah.
Okay. Because the next thing kind of builds onto that. Don't have to talk about it too much, but solo self-found is a very, popular request, and from the recent dev talk that you guys had, it sounded like you guys are considering it, just not for launch, which is really exciting to hear. And to build onto that, solo self-found is essentially a toggle to, make certain things in the game not available to you. For example, no trading or no grouping. And I was wondering if you would build onto that and maybe consider other types of restrictions. For example, the OG Iron Man of not being able to equip anything above white gear, or maybe something silly like a warlock who's not able to use fire spells as a special toggle. These are also challenges in the add-on, and the reason why I'm wondering if it's going to be a potential built-in system in the game is because you can't accidentally fail them. If you have Iron Man in the game with an add-on, you might accidentally equip a green item. If it's in the game, it might just stop you. So I'm wondering what you think about that.
This is sort of a tough one. Like you mentioned, the community hardcore add-on has a lot of really fun opt-in challenges. When we initially started discussing what to include versus what to exclude in our initial launch of hardcore, we did talk about, whether or not to include some of those opt-in challenges. That being said, we sort of landed on, we really want to take things one step at a time. Yeah. So for launch, we want to focus on, setting the foundations of hardcore, releasing with that, one life only rule. And, second, I feel like this is actually a great spot for the add-on to continue to allow players to opt into these challenges, because we want to avoid being prescriptive on how players engage with hardcore, and so we were a little cautious. But yes, our priority was to like I said, set the foundations of hardcore, release with the one life only rule, and monitor, receive feedback, listen to that feedback.
Yeah, I think to add on to that, just the opt-in nature of those things is great. And I think anything we do would likely be something that would be opted into. There was a lot of folks kind of early on that were like, well, why aren't you restricting trading right off the snap? And it's like, not everyone actually wants that. We've seen a lot of commentary, every time kind of a thread pops up where someone's like, I can't believe you're allowing trading. There's almost immediately a reply that's like, I really want to trade. Please let me trade. So it's very kind of divisive, which is kind of how Classic is. There's no two people that can really agree on like what the right thing to do with Classic is, right? So it's all sort of a deeply personal experience, and we think that freedom and that choice is important. And for launch, like Nora said, we just kind of wanted a baseline, and this is just the beginning. We can keep adding on to this.
Yeah, I was surprised at first that you guys didn't consider putting it into the game straight at the start, but I do understand why. And I think I do agree with you that at least having it as an opt-in would make more sense for the overall player. So if you don't want to opt into that, then you don't. And if you want to, then you have that to show off for. So yeah, and I would like to see other toggles maybe in the future as well, because like I said, the add-on is great with the challenges, but you can accidentally fail some of them. Whereas if it's built into the game itself, it's more, more rigid. So that's why I wanted to mention it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, totally.
Okay, another kind of achievement or challenge, a thing that I wanted to ask. Have you guys had any thoughts on allowing players to re-level the same character, essentially deleting everything and starting from 1 on the same character, with maybe some kind of Paragon prestige system where it might say 1 or 2 or 3 if you manage to do it 3 times, you know, keeping track of how many times you've hit max level, basically.
So essentially like a reincarnation system.
Yeah.
That's something that it's funny that, I'm just being honest, it's not something that we'd really thought about all that much until pretty recently. We've seen seen that suggested quite a bit. I mean, the simple answer is no plans, but at the same point, I think that's really cool personally. So
Yeah.
I would like to see that at some point. We'll see. You know, it's one of those things that is, you know, we kind of always have to look at each of these features as like, well, how additive will it be to the experience, and like, is the, you know, the what it takes to get it out and everything, is that sort of worth the investment and stuff. So you know, we'll keep an eye on that, but I think that's a cool idea.
Awesome.
And
Great
you know,
to hear.
build on that, we're constantly watching for feedback. So you know, if cool ideas like this is something that players want to see, like, take to the forums, submit feedback, you know, post on social media, do things that you know, let us know what you think, because like, yeah, I personally think it sounds really fun too, but we really want to serve the players.
All right. Okay, everyone, you heard what to do. Awesome.
Nicely, please.
Yeah, nicely.
Yes,
Yeah,
nicely.
no pitchforks. Moving on from achievements, there's a few class-related questions I wanted to ask you guys. On the topic of, you guys were increasing or unlimiting buffs and debuffs on players and enemies as well. And I was wondering if you guys have done anything about multiple copies of the same hot, usually, on the same player, like having 2 druids cast 1 rejuve each on a player. Does that work, or would it, you know, replace it?
So that will currently behave the same. I think we've you know, not just in for hardcore and the debuff limit thing, but back in 2019 Classic, towards the end, like especially in Naxxramas, when there were so many world buffs available and stuff. You know, I remember I was a main tank, and I remember everyone's like, "Oh, don't put hots on the main tank. You're going to push a world buff off."
Yeah.
And towards the end, at that point, we actually made it so that a heal over time effect could not push off buffs. So this is always something that's kind of in the back of our mind that we're looking at. We did talk about potentially letting you double up on things like renews and rejuves and things like that, but that was a larger mechanical change than I think we were really comfortable with at that moment. But that's definitely something I feel like I've been on this team for a while, and that just kind of keeps coming up. So the more often it comes up in discussion, the more likely it is that we kind of decide to make a tweak at some point. So again, I hate to keep saying this, no plans right now, but never say never. That's definitely something that I could see us looking at again.
Okay,
really
cool.
hard too, because a lot of classic behaviors are due to like technical limitations at the time that Classic was originally released. And so part of what we have to do is kind of balance out, like, okay, well, if we did, you know, modernize certain behaviors, does it start to feel not like Classic, you know? So it is something we're very cautious about.
Yeah, I think that makes sense. Being cautious about Classic, I think, is always the right move. But I just wanted to ask, since you guys did remove the limitation, since they kind of, they are kind of similar in its topic. On the topic of some classes losing their abilities, I think this has been discussed quite a bit. Warlock Soulstone, Shaman's Ankh. I was wondering if you guys are considering compensating them with something else.
So I think in general, even with the removal of things like Ankh or Soulstone, we do believe affected classes still bring a decent amount of utility and survivability to the table. We do realize that the ability to prevent death or return from the dead has been a fun and unique staple for some of these classes. But also with hardcore, where everyone only has 1 life, we think it's important to preserve the feeling that death is final. The more spells and abilities we allow that circumvent that, the less final death feels. And so, you know, like I said, we do still think these classes are very strong. We think that we don't have any plans to sort of compensate them for the removal of their death prevention or resurrection spells.
This sort of harkens back to my last answer too, about not wanting to necessarily be too transformative with how classes play in terms of like directly buffing or directly adding an ability to a class's repertoire just for hardcore. That might be a little bit too transformative of an experience. And thinking about things like warlocks are It's a weird thing that I feel like they're always in demand, especially in hardcore, and there's never enough of them to go around. And having the ability just to summon people is incredibly valuable in a world where death is permanent. And, I can't tell you how many times I've been watching YouTube on a second monitor and ran off a cliff or something. So being able to just skip track is very powerful. And same thing with shamans. Like, everybody loves Wind Fury, right? You're never going to not have shamans. So, yeah, we feel like it's pretty good.
Yeah, no, I understand that. As a warlock, I was just hoping for some special treatment. Speaking of warlocks, an interesting thing I haven't really seen talk about is a Ritual of Doom. What happens if you use that?
Doom. Yeah, honestly, that's the kind of thing we're still actually kind of thinking about that a little bit. We don't want there to be a gotcha situation where someone just plops it down and some unwitting person walks along and clicks it, and bad things happen. So we're going to look at that pretty closely. Nothing really specific to talk about, but there may be a slight adjustment to that, but we'll see.
Okay, so it hasn't been adjusted yet. So right now you may die.
You may die, yeah.
Okay, good to know.
Yeah, don't click a little thing in town, a little platform altar. There you go. Don't do it.
Oh yeah, I would never do that. I would never do that. Yeah. Similar question: Paladins with divine intervention.
That's an awesome. I think we've seen moments in the community where divine intervention was used in really dire situations. I can think of a certain instance on Alcaz Island where things really went bad fast, and someone had to make a difficult choice in that moment to save someone else when everything was going wrong. And I think that's interesting gameplay, and that's a feature of Paladins that is particularly heroic. And if someone wants to bear that weight, then they can.
Wow. Okay. That's a really cool answer. Awesome. I wasn't sure if you would maybe consider changing that just because, I don't know, someone might accidentally use it not realizing that it actually kills them.
Yeah, that is a thing, and we hope everyone reads tooltips.
Hopefully. The Darkmoon card Twisting Nether, has that been adjusted?
So that will not work. So if you were hoping to use the Darkmoon card Twisting Nether to resurrect yourself from the dead, that's not going to work.
Okay, gotcha. For people who may not know, this trinket has like a, 10% chance of saving you from dying, so I guess it doesn't work anymore. Good to know. All right, a little bit more system general game questions. Have you guys come to a conclusion on how many servers will be available for the launch?
As few as possible. So we anticipate that the demand will be very high for at least the first, few days, week or so. But we do, we're going to try to strike a balance. We don't want every server to be full and queuing, but we also don't want empty servers. And so we're erring on the side of caution, and we're just going to kind of go with as few as we can get away with.
To give a little bit more specific of an answer, that will almost certainly be more than one in the US and EU. This is a weird situation where a lot of times what happens when we have multiple servers is everyone's like, what's the good server to play on, right? And that's where most people go to, and there's a bunch of other empty servers. Hardcore might be a situation where people actually want to play on the less populated server. So that's an interesting thing to look at. But at the same point, like what Nora said, we don't want to end up in a situation where there's really one full server and a bunch of empty ones. And so we're going to have at least a few, but we're going to kind of look at what the demand looks like early on and sort of make decisions in the moment.
Okay, so you don't have like a number in mind. You're just gonna sort of.
I mean, we have a number in mind, but I don't want to say
nothing official. Okay.
Yeah, exactly.
Gotcha. I'm wondering if you guys were considering maybe having a name reservation period, but I take the answer is no, because you mentioned not wanting to stack on certain servers. So yeah, no name reservation then.
Correct.
You guys have mentioned a few times about disconnect safeties, like for example when on a flight path so that you don't just fall to your death. I was wondering if you guys did any consideration for disconnect protection for when you're underwater, so essentially drowning.
There's nothing specific for underwater. We did in general, so we were talking about this in an earlier interview, that an interesting thing about World of Warcraft is that whenever you disconnect normally, the game actually wants to keep you in the world for as long as possible, just in case you reconnect, But for hardcore, obviously, that's not ideal. We want to kind of get you out as quickly as possible, especially if it was an unexpected disconnect. So, we did adjust the code to keep you in the world for a shorter amount of time, and that would apply anywhere that you got disconnected. Past that, not really, nothing specific for water. We know that there is an issue on air where sometimes you'll disconnect underwater. That's resolved in the new patch. We're not super worried about that in this situation either.
Okay, interesting. Yeah, I think a fix like that, shortening that time may help you then, because the drowning still does take a bit of time.
Yeah, we really want to stress though that if you are over pull, like if you got 4 things beating on you, pulling your internet cord is probably not going to save you. It's not that fast,
Oh,
and we don't want it to be that fast. But if you're just running down a road and you get disconnected, ideally you'll survive that. Or hopefully you'll survive that. It depends on what's around you, obviously, but yeah, it's for
gotcha.
situations like that.
The 24 lockout, or the 24-hour lockout for dungeons. I was wondering, I don't know if you guys have specified, is it from when you enter the dungeon or when you complete it, or is there like a specific timer, like heroic dungeons where it's 7 a.m. in the morning for everyone, or how is it gonna work?
There's a specific timer. It's just the same as, for example, Wrath of the Lich King heroic dungeons.
Perfect. Okay, I think that simplifies grouping and stuff like that. On the topic of world buffs, so hardcore has a lot less players, a lot less max level players. My question is if you guys are considering at all to put world buffs on some kind of timer instead of waiting for people to actually clear the raids and stuff like that.
The short answer is no. This is an interesting question. We've talked about this a bit. One of the things that we've sort of learned about world buffs and relearned, I guess, is that going into Classic, we didn't want to make any adjustments. We kind of let it ride, and then when we did our first season of Mastery, we did it without world buffs. And one of the things that we kind of came to realize is that actually cost us quite a bit in terms of fun social moments. In playing on the hardcore realms again, really drove that home. That there's oftentimes 1 or 2 guilds that would say, okay, Sunday at noon, we're going to drop Onyxia's head, be there or be square, kind of thing. And that's an interesting moment because there's the one guy in the back screaming late if it's 1 minute late, and there's another person that's sort of just making kind of silly memes in chat and stuff, and it's a moment. And that's one of those things that putting it on a timer, while more efficient, and that's a modern gamer solution, and it's very efficient, but at the same point it's like you're going to lose something with that, we think. And there's also a reward. Somebody had to work to get to that point, to get that thing and hold that head and do it, and we don't want to deprive people of that, I guess.
I think I like that answer. I wanted to ask this anyways because I see both sides of it. Like you said, it's like a friendly, modern, casual friendly thing in a way, and especially on a server where it's going to be so rare to catch something like that, but at the same time, those social moments when you go to Stormwind and there's so many people and you're like, oh, is there a buff dropping soon? I definitely see the social aspect of that too. We are reaching the end now, so I want to throw some of my more fun questions. I want to talk about our fallen friends, our ghost friends. I'm wondering if you guys have thought about doing something extra for ghosts where they maybe appear for other players as well in moments, kind of like the haunted memento item, where you can sometimes see them but not target them. I'm wondering if that's something that you would, or just what your thoughts on that are.
That's that is a really interesting idea. So, my personal thoughts would, I would encourage those friends to create a new character and go again. But the thing about death in WoW, especially hardcore WoW, is that it's sort of meant to be somewhat oppressive. It's why you can't currently do a lot of the things that you described, emoting and stuff like that, that you're normally able to do when you're alive. That being said, we're always thinking about how to serve and delight our players. So who knows? We love hearing player feedback on all that cool stuff that they want to see in Classic.
Yeah, that's a suggestion I've seen pop up kind of recently. It wasn't really something that I'd personally thought of, but I again, that's another thing that I personally think is really cool. Like that would be really fun. So never say never. That sounds like a fun idea.
Yep.
Cool.
Never say never.
Nice to hear you being positive about it. I was listening to one of the other interviews and they were talking about how maybe there would be like ghost guilds. And I think if you have a ghost guild and you gather together in front of other players and they can like sometimes spot you, I think that would be cool. And maybe even, add some kind of special emote versions. Maybe a ghost chat that only ghosts can read. Things like that I think would be really cool.
Yeah, it sounds awesome and social. We love it.
Yeah, exactly. On the topic of just leveling in general and hitting max level and the servers just opening up, are we going to see anything for the first, just random number I thought of, 1,000 players who hit max level? Will they be immortalized on, maybe some kind of statue or so. Is that an idea?
I wish that we don't have any plans for that, but that is something that I think would be incredible to have.
Yeah, we did actually talk about that a little bit, and it was sort of late kind of thing that we discussed, and one of the reasons why we didn't really pursue it too is that for us, WoW Classic Hardcore is really kind of about that leveling journey, and it's also about kind of going at it at your own pace. And we talk about a lot about like, well, what if we gave you a reward or a mount or something in Wrath if you hit max level? And we really want to try and limit any kind of extrinsic reward for like high-end accomplishments in Classic, especially trying to like speed runs, or not Classic but Hardcore, especially like trying to like speed run to 100. That seems like it's maybe a little bit that's not quite the message we want to send for this. It's really this is kind of a chill game mode. At least that's how we kind of see it, that like it's about kind of dropping in and dropping out at your own leisure. It's an evergreen game mode. It's not really, it's kind of the I don't want to say the anti, but it's a little bit different than the traditional like, I got to get to max level, I got to get my previs, I got to go to raid, and it's just like, no man, just take it easy, just just chill, just level at your own pace. There are people who want to do it, but it didn't seem important, I guess, to the overall vibe of what we were doing.
We didn't want to put the pressure on people's shoulders to rush to max level. And we know that like people will opt into like speed leveling all the way to 60, and that's really exciting. But we want it to be opt-in rather than like making you feel like you have to.
Or
Gotcha.
Putting some extrinsic reward at the end of it,
Well, the last question then, what the team is looking most forward to with the launch?
For me, it's just seeing how far I can get on my first go. I've not hit 60 yet. I got pretty close on a couple of characters, but I really want to see how far I get, how far I can get the first time. That's my personal thing. I think the thing I'm looking forward to just from the community is just seeing like things like Makara tournaments, seeing things like Warsong Gulch, like a war game pre-made premeditated battles. I think that's going to be really fun, and just sort of the how it works when it's all official and everyone's on the same rule set and the server's full, and that's so exciting that first week.
I mean, to build off on that, that first week, I've spent countless hours in World of Warcraft, dating all the way back to original launch, and when I log into the game, I get this incredible sensation, like I'm logging into a world that's become a second home for me. And I think about all the friends I used to adventure with, all the friends that still adventure with me to this day. And I think, people are still making these stories. They're still making these memories, these connections in World of Warcraft Classic right now. And with the launch of official hardcore, like Josh says, it comes so many new novel high stakes opportunities to connect with one another. So selfishly, what I'm looking forward to most on launch is all the new friends I'm going to make, all the new adversaries, the new stories we're about to make together.
Awesome. Yeah, that's really nice to hear. I'm also really looking forward to it. And like you said, I think World of Warcraft has always been, and is especially with these kind of game modes where everything is about the journey rather than the destination, always makes for the best sort of social experiences. And well, that was it for me. Thank you so much, Josh and Nora, for sitting here with me today and talking about Classic Hardcore. I really enjoyed all the answers. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Bye-bye.